Are we there? We are. Hello, friends. Thank you for joining me today. My name is Dan Nelson, and this is Daily Art Adventure number 617, doing a watercolor portrait. I've been a little absent lately, haven't I? All my regular friends. Sorry about that. I've just been busy doing other things, which is not my favorite way to be. My favorite thing to do is hang out with you while I'm creating artwork. That is the truth. All right, so today, and this is going to be in two parts because I'm going to have to leave here in just about 30 minutes. Today, forgive me, I'm trying to get my my iPad. It should be good. All right. Watercolor portrait. Here it is. Here's a full-size 12 by 16 inch portrait of this lovely young bride. And I did a practice yesterday so that I would know where I was going. Okay, where to start? I've got one thought crowding out another here, and at the same time I failed to get my iPad ready to go. All right, oh, new thing I finally have available right there on your channel. Super Chat, that's what it's called. For a second I couldn't remember. Super Chat. So if you guys want to send me some money, hey, what the heck? Why wouldn't you want to send me money? That's what I can't figure out. And get a little bit of attention for yourself, you just click on the Super Chat. I think it's up and running. We'll find out, won't we? All right, let's talk about how do you do watercolor portraits, right? First thing, let me turn you around so you're looking at my beautiful table, not my beautiful face. You don't need to do what I do, but as you can see, this is literally what I do. I got online. Now, this is the one thing that maybe Pinterest is good for. Pinterest, by the way, has almost single-handedly ruined the search function, image search function in Google, but that's another subject for another time. The one thing that is good about Pinterest is you can gang together a whole bunch. So I just went to Pinterest and followed various leads. These are all watercolor paintings. Now, why do I do this? Perhaps you've seen me do this before when I was doing paintings, gouache paintings of urban settings. I printed out a whole bunch of my favorite cityscapes. I printed out favorite architecture renderings. Anyway, I do this to inspire myself. Before I start doing anything, so in this case, before I start doing a watercolor portrait, I want to just let my soul, if you will, absorb, not in a copy this, copy that, copy this kind of way, but just in a general way. Of the 30 that I have here, understand that I didn't click on 200. I just clicked on the ones that really caught my fancy yesterday when I did this. And as you can see, I plan to use this again because I went ahead and laminated it. So this will become a permanent part of my watercolor portrait kit. All right, now speaking of watercolor portrait kits, I'm done with that for now. I've just got my mind filled with what good watercolor portraits look like. Now, this is important. And lucky for you, nice of me, I have already posted on YouTube community. So that means you go to your YouTube, you're already watching me evidently, so you click on the little round picture of me that takes you to my channel, right? And when you get to my channel, there's 4 words along the top of the screen. Home, videos, playlist, community. Well, there's 6 words across the top, but the 4th word is community. 4th word, home, videos, playlist, community. What is community? It's a place where you and I can share documents, basically. So I have already posted 2 things there this morning. One is, and I'm thrilled that I did this because now it's documented for myself as well as for you. This is my portrait. Does it say that here? Yeah. You can't read that maybe. Portrait watercolor palette. Now you might ask, what's the difference between a portrait watercolor palette and a regular watercolor palette? Here's my regular. Okay, Dan Nelson's watercolors. Oh, and it's glued together. There we go. Okay. Looks the same, bunch of messy colors, right? Here's the difference. Hey, David. Good, keep an eye on me. Here's the difference. Portrait watercolors, I want them all to be liftable. I don't want any staining, because when you're doing portraits, in my opinion, and doing it my way, too often you have to lift out colors. You don't want any of these colors. You put it down on your portrait. Oh, I should have had a sample of an old watercolor portrait that I've done here. Oh yeah, okay, good, I do. Here's one. This is not what I'm doing. This is not the bridal portrait. But in my opinion, you do not want to put some color and then go, ooh, it's a little too dark, I need to lift it out. And then find out that you can't lift it out because it's a staining color. What I'm saying right now only makes sense to you watercolor people. If you're not a watercolor person, you maybe don't know what the heck I'm talking about. Liftable, staining color, and so on and so on. Just basically, there's some colors that, most colors in watercolor, you can put them down and then you can re-wet them and lift them out off the paper. But there are several colors that don't lift very well. So, all right, so back to my watercolor palette. I did this research, man, several years ago. 5, 6, 7 years ago, maybe, I don't remember. And thankfully, I wrote most of the colors on here. And if you go to community, you can download this yourself. While you're at it, while I'm talking about it, I also put this, a variation of this morning. I called it Dan Nelson's Watercolor Portrait Process. And I had 1 through, on community, it's 1 through 15. Not for you to copy. I mean, you can if you want, but I'm not that, what's the word I'm trying to say? I'm not all that great. But it's if you don't know where to start, hey, if you don't know where to start, this is probably better than what you're gonna do. Okay, and frankly, by the way, I can look at all these awesome watercolor painters and tell that many of them are not doing what I did, but that doesn't matter. At least I'm not lost. I have a step 1ly, 2ly, 3ly, and that is available for you there at my community as well. So, liftable colors. Unfortunately, I will tell you right off the bat, there's a few colors here that I don't know what they are. 1, 2, 3, 4. I am so sorry about that. I don't know what happened. I don't know why they didn't get labeled, but they didn't. And maybe you can help me figure out what they are. I think this might be Payne's Gray, but be that as it may. That's up here. I was off the picture, wasn't it? There's Payne's Gray. All right, so let's get started. Whew. First of all, back to the young lady whose portrait I am painting. And there it is. And let me show you one more bit of preparation. Yesterday, before I got too deep in, with a piece of leftover paper, the same kind of paper I'm going to be working on today, I did a portrait of, and forgive me, I'm drawing a blank on her name. It'll come back to me in a minute. All right, so this was practice, and boy, am I glad that I did this practice, because there are several things that I learned while I was doing this that I thought, ooh, next time I do that, I'm going to change this, that, and thus and so. Got it? So it's not bad, but I can do a little bit better. All right? And I have gone ahead and started the real artwork. So let's talk, first of all, about cheating. I traced this image. Can you believe it, folks? I want to hear a hue and cry, like, no! And some of you going, yeah, there's no such thing as cheating. Yeah, I know what you mean. But, okay, yes, cheating is legal. And for me, so I have a light table, you see that? And I traced this image as carefully as I could. Let me move you guys just for a second then. Okay, so we've done this, you've heard this drill before, but let's just do it again real quickly. And all cheating is legal. What is cheating? Quote unquote. You have to put quotation marks around cheating, of course, because is it really cheating? No, it's legal. But cheating is tracing, like you just saw, tracing, projecting, gridding, even measuring with proportional dividers. That's the least cheating method. Because you and I all, we wish we could just look at a person and just draw without any mechanical means whatsoever. We wish we could draw a perfect likeness, don't we? I do. There are times when it's not worth trying to do that. This, for me, today, this is one of those times. It's not worth me spending hours trying to get every feature right when I can just trace. Now, what's the downside of trace? The upside is time efficiency, especially if you're making money like I am. I don't want to waste time doing that. That's the upside. And fast, accurate, efficient, so on. What's the downside? Is my brain is shrinking. Every time I cheat, instead of doing it the hard way, my skills are deteriorating a little bit. And I don't know about you, but that freaks me out. I don't like the thought of my skills deteriorating. So there you go. All cheating is legal. Just remember, every time you cheat, your brain shrinks. I'm being facetious. I'm using picturesque language. You know what I mean by that. All right, let's go back to the drawing then. So the first step was I traced this very carefully with a graphite pencil. I like a high quality 5 millimeter lead, small lead, and be careful not to push down too hard. You can keep it really light. And I'm assuming you guys can even see this. You may not be able to. And then, as you can see, the next thing I did is I used a liquid mask. Okay, that's this stuff right here. There's several different brands. Here's a tinted brand by Grumbacher and a colorless brand by Winsor Newton. Just a word about how to do that. I have in all of my watercolor kits, I have at least one brush that is used for nothing but masking, because as you can see, the bristles are completely glued together. Now, when you stick this in a liquid mask, they soften up a little bit because the mask is a solvent for the dry mask here. So anyway, just pick one brush that's not your favorite brush, not your best brush, and that gets set aside permanently as a masking brush. All right. So, and I did not do masking on yesterday's painting, and then I wish I had. All right, sorry, I was reading David's comment. I'll get back to that later, David. So here we go. I'm gonna follow my steps. I won't read it to you, so careful graphite drawing is done. And in this case, I used a masking fluid. Okay, step number one. Are we wide as wide out as we can? Yeah, pretty much. So here's my watercolor palette. And here's my big brush. The first step for me is to do a warm wash over the entire page. Oh, I just remembered something I didn't do yet. I'll have to do it later. I failed to put tape on the back of this. Some of you have seen that trick, just putting some masking tape crisscross across the back. You don't have to cover the whole back. I just mean put some masking tape on the back. Let me get this image on here so I don't ruin it. All right, so this is how I start. If I'm using my typical portrait method, I do a warm, very pale wash. Now that's assuming that the watercolor painting that I'm talking about, that the image is going to be essentially a warm image. If it's not, if it's going to be a cool image, then you would do a cool wash. All right, I'm doing the whole page, no border this time, just the entire page. All right, now while that is still damp, I'm going to grab a slightly smaller brush and I'm going to start blobbing in local color. In other words, flesh tone. Flesh tone. Oh, it's all right there. As you can see, I'm letting it bleed. And then, let me show you the photograph again. Lots and lots and lots of green, right? So, well, but a little bit of brown at the bottom. So let me go ahead and get some of that done. She's standing on a brick walkway in a garden or something, some nice verdant green background. So as you can see, I'm doing this wet on wet on wet. I want this stuff to bleed. Now the question that you would ask, same as I asked myself, is like, wait a minute, do I want green going into her face, into her flesh tone? Well, I just answered that question for you, didn't I? Why? The next question is, why do I want green on her face? So glad you asked that question. Because, there, just because. No, because if there's a person, human being, as there is in this case, standing in a green grass, green bushes, green trees overhead, it's impossible for a person to, no, I don't want that much. Do you see what just happened there? So I'm going to just go ahead and lift out some of that, and I'll come back and do more flesh tone on top of that. Especially she's wearing a white dress. What color, ladies and gentlemen, is white fabric? The answer is, it picks up all the colors around it. That's what color white fabric is. Don't say white if you're an artist, right? I'm going to go again to stepping down to a smaller brush, 1-inch brush now. And again, still just blocking in quite loosely. I can still see my pencil lines. That's a good thing. Oh, I forgot to say something about the paper that I'm working on. I am once again, I asked myself, how do I get in these situations? I'm doing a portrait. Am I on the screen there? Barely. Her again. The lady's face is barely larger than my thumb, and that's what I say. How do I get myself into these things? It's a long story. I don't recommend it. I didn't advertise for this. In fact, don't tell anybody. But the young lady who ordered this misread some of my descriptors. I'm happy to do it, and she's paying me, but I do not want to do watercolor portraits this size, just in case you're wondering. But once she got her heart, once she said, oh, this is what I want, I wasn't about to go back to her and say, well, that's not really what I meant. But that is what happened. All right, now while it's still wet, I'm going to go ahead and lift out, because I do like all of this brown and green on her white dress, but I don't want quite that much brown and green on her white dress. Does that make sense? Now, we are going to take our first break right here, because I'm going to get out the hair dryer and I'm going to, thank you, David. Sorry, a little bit late, a little bit slow there on your chat. Sorry about that. So I'm going to get out my hair dryer, and it's a horrible noise. I don't like it myself, but it has to be done. So give me just 2 minutes and I'll be right back with continuation. All right, there we go. We're back finally. Sorry about that. So I got the whole thing dried. By the way, you have to dry both sides. As you know, if you just dry one side, it'll just curl up. So you have to turn the page over and dry the other side. Now, here's what I should have done this before I did that first wash, but I forgot. So this is the trick. If you don't know this, good one to know. Just tape on the back. And I started to talk about the paper. All right, so this is Arches or Arche. It's French, so it's Arche, but in America we just call it Arches. 140-pound hot press paper. By no means my favorite watercolor, probably my least favorite. Hot press is not our friend, because it makes every single stroke and impurity show up very intensely. I would rather use 300-pound cold press. But because I'm doing a portrait this small, if I used cold pressed paper, you know, bumpy, mountainy paper, the features on the bumps on the paper are bigger than her entire face. That's an exaggeration. Bigger than her eye, nose, mouth, so on and so forth. All right, so I'm using hot press, not my favorite. All right, now step number 3. No, step number 4, here we go. Lift out light areas. So let's get serious. Again, this is just one approach among many. Before I do anything else, I'm going to start lifting out the highlights of her face. And I hope that impresses you as rather counterintuitive, because I think that should seem counterintuitive to you. And if you're hanging around me very long, then you know that very often counterintuitive is my middle name, or counterintuitive is the best way to do stuff. Let's just zoom right in here so you can see what I'm doing. Hang on, I'm going to try to get it straightened out. There we go. All right, so I'm looking at this. This is a slightly larger version, so I can see the details well. And and you can see already the areas that have been masked here. Now, a couple words about lifting. First of all, as you already know, I'm pretty sure that all the colors I'm using are liftable. That's why this is my portrait watercolor palette, because according to my research and experience, all of these colors are liftable. I would be really up a creek now if I started finding myself trying to lift out colors and go, oh no, it doesn't come out, but these do come out, so good news. The other thing I will point out, of course, I keep dipping my brush in clean water. The other thing I will point out is, so as I'm drawing quite carefully. The other thing I'll point out is that I'm using a bristle brush, not and now I'll use a soft brush later, but a bristle brush gives you just a little bit of friction, a little bit of rub on the paper, whereas a soft synthetic sable or sable brush wouldn't give you any friction at all, because I'm actually using the stiffness of the bristles to help lift out the watercolor. Does that make sense? Again, so what is this tool? It's a worn out bristle brush that I broke off the end and then stuck it in a pencil sharpener so I can actually use both ends in watercolor for scratching. This end for scratching and this end for lifting. Now, when I get down to some real detailed areas of lifting, I'm going to be at this for a little while, and this is as far as we're going to get in this broadcast because I have to go run off and have a meeting, and I'll finish this afternoon. So I hope you can join me this afternoon for, I suppose it'll be called Daily Art Adventure 618, unless I call it 617B. I haven't decided which way to go yet. All right, a little bit more instruction about lifting, especially if you're working on a hot press paper. Now this is important. Hot press paper is not nearly as sturdy and stiff as cold press. Again, cold press is the traditional bumpy stuff, especially the best paper, and all of us, our favorite, is cold press 300 pound. Right, the nice thick stuff, not the 140 like this. Why did I use 140? Because I knew I was going to trace. So I used the thin paper partly so that I would be able to see through it. Now I know not all of you have a light table. If you're going to be a full-time artist or anywhere close to a full-time hobby artist, I would myself recommend getting a light table. I remember I got mine 35 years ago, this one right here. They now have LED, super high-tech, nice ones, very thin, and so on. And I've used those, and they're very nice. But I have this one, and then I have, in the same brand, I have a travel light table, and I find them very helpful. So when you do have to cheat, man, as I say when I'm teaching drawing, all cheating is legal, but if you're going to do it, man, do it right. Don't cut yourself short. Now you can build your own light table. It's real simple, especially if you have a handy person, a handyman type man or woman in your house. You're probably the handyman. If you're an artist, you're probably the handyman. But it's real easy, just a piece of frosted plexiglass with a light bulb underneath it and a brick under one side. That'll do. But anyway, here I am. So you have to be very careful, and go back to the paper. You have to be very careful not to scrape too much. You'll notice I'm not staying in any one area too long, because if I do, it'll start eating up the paper. I don't know if you can see this, and I've got a tiny little, oh good, see, I picked it up with that little sharp wooden point. Before we go then, let me pick up a small brush. Let me see, which one do I want? I guess this is a very cheap, that is to say inexpensive, like one of those, I got this in one of those kits, Princeton Select, flat shader. Got one of those where you can buy, I think, 10 brushes maybe for $15. Think about it, $1.50 each. So no self-respect, listen to me, this is tongue-in-cheek on purpose. No self-respecting artist, let alone a full-time professional artist, would be caught dead using one of these cheap brushes. We should all, I'm being facetious here, please bear with me. We should all be using as expensive a brush as we can. We should all be using Winsor Newton Series 7s all the time. I make facetious and sarcastic as I can be, so that we can brag to our friends and tell them how good we are, because we can tell them we only ever use the best. Give me a break. You've heard me maybe say before, Rembrandt in his wildest dreams, and everybody before and after him, never had a brush this good. So quit your griping. I got 10 brushes for 15 bucks, and they work perfectly well. Now, I do have, as you know, I absolutely do have a series, Winsor Newton series, a bunch of them, and I love them. I cherish and take care of them. But no, you can do good painting without spending a mint on brushes. Don't let anybody, any snooty art teacher tell you any different. Nothing wrong with using a cheap brush when a cheap brush will do, as it will right now. Okay, so there you go. So I switched away from my bristle brush to just so I could lift out with a little more detail. And this, I understand that what I'm doing right now is pretty darn boring, right? You guys can first of all hardly see what I'm doing. I understand that. But I've discovered, for me, when it comes to portrait work, there's no time like right here to do this really, really sensitive and delicate lifting. From this point on, actually, in the watercolor, well, when I do dark details, that'll be fine. But most of the painting process from this point on will be much coarser, bigger brush, looser than what I'm doing right now. But I love the way this technique. Can you see this girl's face already beginning to appear? And I got subtleties going on. It will just serve me well throughout the rest of the painting process. I'm going to go back to my big brush for a minute. Just get her. Oh, I forget. There's a French name. What for this? A woman's chest. Oh, what's it called? Sorry, you know what I'm talking about. It's a mildly non-erotic word. Colature? I forget what it is. Anyway, that's funny. That's funny. We'll do just a little bit more with you here, down here, looking at her hands. Well, that's about it. I need to run to a meeting. That's as far as I'm going to get with this broadcast. But I hope that was helpful, informative, and I look forward to getting back with you this afternoon. Okay? Watercolor portrait. When I come back, it will be step number 5, medium dark and medium dark details. So not the dark, not the most dark, but the medium dark and medium dark details. That's what comes next, and that will be, of course, on a dry paper. All right, thank you guys. David talking about my lecture last Thursday. I guess that's what that's about. I'm glad you watched it, David. Thank you. I look forward to hearing your serious response to that. All right, guys. Bye-bye. I'll be back.